Suteki na karisomasuo. I made a promise to Yumiko. Japan was far, and life dragged me farther away. I must keep my promise. I need to go to Japan again to find her. Maybe she will forgive me. Maybe she still remembers. And then, Yoshi, you came back. Welcome back to the fire. Tonight's story happened in 1950s Japan to my great-grandfather Yoshi. It begins like this. This happened to me in the 1950s in Japan. I was 12 the first time we went to Japan for Christmas. My parents said it was good to spend the holidays with relatives. But for me, everything just felt new. The mountains and trees. Even the mountain air felt colder than in Canada. The streets smelled like roasted chestnuts, and the lights looked warmer somehow. Our relatives lived in a small town on the mountains, quiet but bright with decorations. My parents wanted to visit relatives, so we spent the holidays in a small town in the mountains. The trip was long, but when we reached the mountains, the air felt different. The cold wind coming from the white peaks. The quiet roads opened a whole new place, washed the tiredness off me. By the time we reached my uncle's shrine, it felt like I'd stepped into another world. My mom introduced us to my uncle, a young Shinto priest. He welcomed us with a smile, bowed, and we bowed back. After we unpacked our bags, I couldn't help it. I stepped outside to look around, wanting to see everything. I was walking near the shrine when I happened to notice an old woman. She was sweeping near the entrance. She moved slowly, her back a little bent, but she smiled when our eyes met. I bowed, and she bowed back. When I looked again a moment later, she was gone, as if she had stepped behind a wall or slipped into another room. The first night, while we were staying at my uncle's shrine, I'd wake up and hear slow footsteps along the wooden walkway outside our door. I thought it was Mom or Dad walking, but when I checked, the hallway was empty. Once, while sweeping the yard, I noticed one of the sliding doors open a little, like someone had passed through, but no one walked out the doors. Behind the shrine, there was a pond I liked to walk to. A couple of times, I thought I saw something. A big creature moved in the water, something shaped like a turtle, but larger than anything I knew. When I tried to walk closer, it slipped quickly into the water and disappeared. I couldn't really tell if it was an animal or something else. A few days later during dinner, I asked my mother about the old lady I saw around the shrine. Why wasn't she eating with us? Mom looked confused and told me my uncle lived alone. I looked at him, but he stayed quiet. Then I told them I saw a big turtle in the pond behind the shrine. That was when my uncle finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Don't go near the pond, my uncle said. A kappa lives there. He explained that a kappa is a water spirit, that it looks like a turtle with a human shape, quiet and patient, and strong enough to drag someone under if they get too close. Hearing that made my chest tighten. A monster that drowned people, but a part of me still wanted to see if it was real. Dad placed his hand on Mom's shoulder and said the same thing my uncle did. Stay away from the pond, all right? I nodded, but that night my mind kept drifting back. to the idea of the kappa, the way my uncle said it, the look in his eyes. I tried to sleep, but part of me couldn't stop wondering what was really in that pond. The next afternoon, I was watching a butterfly. It drifted around the shrine grounds. I was following it as it moved from stone to stone. When it flew off, then something light hit my face. I grabbed it. It was a small paper figure. A gust of wind lit it from my hand, and when I looked around, I realized I had walked close to the pond without noticing. That was when I remembered my uncle's warning. Later that night, before sleeping, I saw the same little paper figure resting at the corner of my window, like someone had quietly placed it there. I didn't know it then, but that little paper figure wasn't just paper. It was a shikigami, a spirit my uncle could summon and bind. Shikigami are like silent guardians, given form through paper and prayer. They don't speak, and they almost never show themselves unless they have a reason to protect someone. Seeing it there somehow made my eyes feel heavy, like I didn't have to worry about anything. I slept so peacefully, I didn't even realize I drifted off. The next evening, Dad and we went down to town. We went to see the Christmas festival. As soon as we reached the town center, the whole place was alive with lights and music. People filled the streets wearing scarves and carrying paper lanterns. There were food stalls and games, and children running with sparkles in their hands. That's when I saw her, a girl about my age, standing near a stall selling sweetbread. She smiled when our eyes met and offered me one without saying a word. I took it, and she laughed. After that, we walked around the festival together, talking in broken English and short Japanese words I knew from my mom. I never even asked her name until the end of the night. She said, Yumiko. I told her mine, Yoshi, as what my mom called me rather than Josh. We watched the fireworks together that Christmas, sitting by the riverbank with the crowd behind us. When it was over, she waved goodbye and ran off toward the lights. I felt happy and sad at the same time. Happy that I met her, and sad that we are leaving soon. 2 years later, when I was 14, we went back to Japan again for Christmas. The town looked the same lights, the same music, the same smell of roasted food drifting through the cold air. But as soon as I walked down the main street, I saw her near the same stall, helping an older woman hand out sweet bread. She looked up and smiled, like she already knew I'd come back. I don't know why, but I smiled too. She waved, and I walked over. We didn't talk much that night, just walked through the stalls again like before. Sometimes we stopped to watch the lights, or just listen to the songs people sang. Before the night ended, she asked if I would come again next Christmas. I told her I wasn't sure, but I hoped I would. She nodded, looked at the snow falling on the river, and said softly, "Then I'll wait." After that trip, everything felt different. Back in Canada, the snow and the lights, even the music on the radio made me think of her. Sometimes I'd look out my window at night, wondering if she was walking by the river like before. I started counting the days until Christmas. I told my parents I wanted to go back to Japan again, even if just for a week. I didn't say why. I just said I missed the place. As the next December came closer, she was in my head. Her laugh and the way she said my name. The way she looked at the lights like they meant something. I didn't know it then, but part of me was already waiting to see her again. When I was 16, we went back to Japan again for Christmas. It had been 2 years, but it felt longer. The moment we reached the town, I went straight to the streets where the festival was held. I didn't even tell my parents where I was going. The lights were brighter that year and the music louder, but all I cared about was finding her. I walked past the food stalls, the bridge, the riverbank. For a while, I thought maybe she wasn't there anymore. Then I saw her standing near the same stall. Her hair a lot longer, but she had the same smile. She said, "You came back." I said, "Of course I did." We spent the whole night walking together. We did not care about the crowd, the food, or the fireworks. Everything just felt right, like no time had passed. That Christmas lasted longer than any before. I stayed in Japan for 2 weeks, and almost every day I met Yumiko. I brought her sweets and chocolates from Canada. We walked through the streets after dinner, talked by the river, and watched the lights until the stalls closed. Sometimes she would bring me warm bread from her family's stall, and sometimes we just sat quietly, listening to the sound of snow. She told me about her school and about her friends, and how the town only felt alive once a year, during Christmas. I told her about Canada, how it snowed the same but felt lonelier. She said if she ever saw snow that far away, she would think of me. As the days passed, it became harder to say goodbye. We didn't talk about what we felt, but it was there, and we both knew it. And the way she smiled when she saw me coming, when we walked down the street, and in the way I stayed up late, thinking about her, hoping tomorrow would move slower. But last night, sat by the river again. The lights reflected on the water, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and food. She said she would turn 18 soon. I told her I would come back when that happens, that I will be here on Christmas, right here by the river. She smiled and said softly, "Then it's a promise." That night, part of me wanted to hug her tight, to hold her and won't let go. But I was scared, don't want to offend her. When she said goodbye, I offered to walk her home. We walked slowly. Each step, my heart felt torn. When we reached their house, she did not come in and wanted to watch me leave. I turned from time to time, and I could see her still looking my way. I thought I saw her wipe her tears. I stopped and wanted to run back at her, but she quickly went inside their house while sobbing. Years passed faster than I thought they would. I finished school and started working, and somewhere along the way, that quiet town in Japan became a memory I carried like a dream. Sometimes on Christmas nights in Canada, I'd catch the smell of roasted chestnuts, but it fades away quickly, and it would all come back. The lights, the river, and Yumiko's smile. I tried to write to her once, twice then, many times after that. But I'd received no reply. All my letters were returned to sender. I wanted to explain things, to ask forgiveness for not keeping my promise. I wanted to return sooner. I told myself I would. But something came up every year. Work, family, life. By the time I finally had the chance, almost a decade had passed. That winter, I found myself in a flight back to Japan. I told myself it was just a trip, but deep down I knew why I was going. I wanted to see if she still remembered. I wanted to keep the promise I made. When I arrived, the town looked smaller than I remembered. Everything seems familiar but felt distant. The lights were fewer, the streets quieter. Many of the old stalls were gone, replaced by closed shops and empty benches. Still, I walked the same road I had walked years ago, hoping to see something familiar. The river was still there, the same stone bridge, the same curve of water. Though the railings were rusted now, I stood there for a long time, watching the reflection of the lights in the water, wondering if she's still there. Then I heard a voice behind me, soft and clear, like it had never aged. You came back. I turned around. Yumiko was standing a few feet away, wearing a light jacket. She looked exactly the same as the night we last met, still beautiful as ever. For a moment I couldn't speak. I just stood there staring, trying to understand what I was seeing. She smiled the same way she used to. She then said, "It's Christmas again. You kept your promise." The next days we met every night. During my stay, time was a blur. I find myself walking to the river after sunset, and she was always there waiting. Same spot, same quiet smile, always under the old street lamp that flickered every few seconds. I asked her once if she wanted to meet during the day, have lunch, or visit the next town. She smiled, but her answer was always the same. Night is better, she'd say. The town looks prettier this way. I didn't press her. I was just happy to see her, even for a few hours. Each night felt like slipping back into a dream. I didn't want to end. We talked, laughed. We walked the same streets we once did. But as the time went by, I started to notice little things. The way she never ate the food we have. How she never seemed tired no matter how late it got. And she seems unbothered by the cold. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. It was Christmas again, and after so long, I was with Yumiko. She wore the same long coat with a scarf wrapped around her neck, her cheeks white from the cold. Come to think of it, she always wore that same jacket every time we met. That morning, before heading to see her, I passed by a small shop near the station. I bought a jacket for her, simple but warm. I thought it would look perfect on Yumiko. So that night when we met by the river, I handed her the small paper bag. I told her it was a Christmas present. She smiled, surprised, and carefully took it from my hands. "It's beautiful," she said, then her voice lowered. "I will wear it later." I laughed a little, thinking she was being shy. But when I looked at her, her smile had turned faint, almost sad. We sat together on the bench by the riverbank. The sky is lit with bright stars. The sound of the water soft and steady. The cold didn't bother me as much with her there. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I could feel her breathing slow, calm, like she was afraid to break the moment. I told her I missed this place, that I thought about it more than I should. She smiled and said she was glad I came back, that I had kept my promise. I wanted to tell her how much I missed her, but the words stayed stuck in my throat. So I just sat there, holding on to her hands against the winter air, somewhere far but enough to hear what was playing on the radio. It was slow, dreamy, and soft. I smiled and asked if she wanted to dance. She hesitated, then smiled and nodded. We stood there under the falling snow, our breath closer, her hands small and cold in mine. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. I told her I'd never forgotten her, that I was sorry my letters did not push through, that I should have come back sooner. She looked at me gently, eyes shining from the lantern light. She said, "What matters is that you came back. You're here now." The song ended, but we didn't let go. I leaned closer, and she closed her eyes. The kiss was soft, real, and warm, and it broke something inside me. I told her I love her. Then the clock from the hill temple struck 12. Fireworks from a distance started to sound. The wind grew stronger. The snow turned heavier. She stepped back slightly, her coat swaying, and that's when I saw it. Beneath the open buttons, her school uniform, the same one she wore the night we made our promise. I froze. She smiled faintly, with teary eyes. "Thank you, Yoshi," she said, "for keeping your Christmas promise." Yumiko's voice shook. "I love you, and I forgive you." I hugged her so tight, and she hugged me back. Then she was gone, like the wind took her away. The snow kept falling, along with my tears, covering the marks our feet had left by the river that night at the Christmas promise.
Thanks for keeping me company tonight. The story sounds better whispered by the fire, don't they? Until we meet again. This is
Whispers of the Scribe.
If you enjoyed tonight's story and would like to keep the fire burning, please support me by buying me a coffee. Every cup fuels me to keep whispering here by the fire. If you have a story of your own, something you've never told, something that still follows you at night, send it to me at whispersofthescribe@gmail.com. Maybe one day
We'll whisper it here by the fire.